But there's no denying at the same time, and I don't think we should deny that the impact of that volume does have impact, and we have to plan for it, and that is something that we're doing increasingly. It's going to require a lot more planning and a lot more work from provinces in particular, and us actually coordinating ourselves.
Well, you've mentioned how foundational immigration is to the country and the Canadian experience, and I know you've seen the polling that shows that feelings about immigration are turning more negative. And this is something that's happening, on your watch. Do you feel some responsibility for that?
As a government official, as the Minister of Immigration, I think the responsibility is mine to assume. It is also, I think, more importantly, based on what I hear from Canadians, it's our job as a government to fix. The steps that we've taken in the last month have been described by some as some of the most important affordability steps that the government has done. So I think that's important. I think even more importantly, because we have spoken about affordability, is to talk about the integrity of the system and the steps that we need to take to make sure that we can have an immigration system that we continue to be proud of. I still believe that we can have a rational, reasonable conversation about three parts of the immigration system that tend to get conflated. One, obviously, the border, which is obviously can get quite heated at times because we need to be able to defend and secure our borders. Two, the immigration system, which has its challenges, particularly post-COVID. And three, immigration generally. You can be for one of those categories against the other, and I'm not going to call you a bigot or someone that's xenophobic. We have to be able to echo and hear those concerns and talk to Canadians about what their fears are. Often when you break things down to their parts, you can have a rational conversation with people about those challenges, and you can agree to disagree. I'm not going to make a big sermon to someone who has a disagreement with me on these issues, because Lord knows I've had them around the Christmas table, and I continue to have them. But it's something I think we can't shy away from as a country, or we can get into that toxic political narrative that we see, sadly, to the south of us.
Well, Minister Miller, thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Mark Miller is the Federal Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. That's all for this week. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. And hey, here's something new. You can now listen to the show on YouTube. Just go to the CBC News page, scroll down a bit, and boom, there we are. What a world. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Ellis Cho, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Caroline Ferris. Our executive producer is Tracy Johnson. I'm Paul Habersrud. Thanks for listening.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg. Sing and sway to R&B on Marvin's Room. Move and groove to the rhythm of Saturday Night Jazz. Crest with the best next wave of Indigenous music on Reclaimed. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. And treasure the arias and encores on Tempo Weekends. Saturday Night Means Music on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for free.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Josh Crabb. At noon, it's currently 9 degrees in Winnipeg. Rain beginning this afternoon with a high of 13 and an east wind 30 gusting to 50. It's 5 degrees in Brandon and 4 in Thompson. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says youth are in an addictions crisis when it comes to young people. Sherry Gott says in the past 5 years, the number of cases related to addictions has jumped from 3% to 22%. She says most of the cases involve girls and most are Indigenous. Gott says there aren't enough resources to help.
90% of service providers feel they were failing young people with addictions. This is deeply concerning. Service providers made several proposed solutions, including more resources that use cultural, land-based approaches.
Gott says Central and Northern Manitoba have the fewest resources for young people. She is calling on the provincial government to increase funding to programs for addictions and mental health programming for youth. Manitoba Progressive Conservatives have set the date to choose a new leader, April 25th of 2025. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the PCs want to take time to get the race right.
The PCs are going to wait another year to replace Heather Stephenson as party leader. She stepped down in January, 3 months after the Tories lost the provincial election to the NDP. PC members will choose their next leader under new rules intended to avoid the problems the party experienced with its 2021 race. That contest ended up in a court challenge. Brad Zander, who heads up the PC Leadership Race Committee, said the long lead time will help the PCs get this contest right.
We want to make sure that at each stage in that process, there's a chance to take a step back, confirm that everything has been done according to the rules.
The long lead time also gives the PCs more time to raise money. The party ended the 2023 election with an $850,000 campaign deficit. So far, former PC MLA Kevin Klein and East St. Paul Mayor Carla Devlin have expressed interest in running. Interim party leader Wayne Owasco has not ruled out running. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's a big day in Ottawa for the Trudeau government. It's budget day, with the Liberals tabling their fiscal blueprint for the upcoming year and beyond. We already know it includes big spending on housing and the military. What we don't know is how the Liberals plan to pay for it. Here's Janice McGregor.
Chrystia Freeland's going to be wearing a new pair of black pumps as she lays out the federal books. Red, however, expected to be the dominant color on her balance sheet. Not only because the Liberals' tour of pre-budget announcements featured $38 billion worth of spending to address urgent needs like the affordable housing shortage, but existing programs like old age security are also set to balloon over time. What today costs the federal coffers over $60 billion is set to spike to over $100 billion by the end of this decade. Canada may have avoided a serious post-COVID recession, but there's not enough economic growth on the horizon to cover something like that. Radio Canada is reporting that to pay for all this, Liberals will be returning to the play they ran after they were first elected, asking the wealthiest 1% to pay more tax. But keeping the deficit from rising, as Freeland has promised she'll do, is going to take more than that. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
Ahead of today's tabling of the federal budget, Statistics Canada has released the latest inflation figures, and they show that the inflation rate inched higher last month, moving up to 2.9% from 2.8% in February. Peter Armstrong has more.
The inflation numbers this morning could have really cast a shadow over this afternoon's budget in Ottawa. If price growth had really picked up speed in March, that would have prompted a whole new conversation about interest rates and about the prolonging of any potential interest rate cuts. But it didn't. And in a way, I think these numbers kind of thread a needle of sorts. Yes, the headline number is up, but it's up only slightly, driven by really predictable factors, gasoline and shelter costs mostly. The core measures that the Bank of Canada really focuses on, they all saw small doses of progress. So now focus can pivot to the federal budget itself and whether the new spending being announced this afternoon might accelerate inflationary pressures. But the basic assumptions in that budget, that CPI will get to 2.5% by the end of this year and all the way back to 2% by next year, those remain very firmly intact. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Ottawa.
Manitoba still has the lowest inflation in the country. Inflation here rose 0.8% in March, down slightly from 0.9% in February. A business owner on St. Mary's Road is frustrated after his store was broken into for the third time in 6 months. Joe Daly Sports and Framing has been in business for 35 years. Travis Daly says since the last break-in in February, security guards have been stationed at the sports memorabilia store, but last night thieves pried open the door before the guards arrived.
We had the security overnight here for several hours at our cost. Insurance doesn't cover that, unfortunately. Even the police officer that was here last night, he said, I don't know what to tell you. You're basically doing everything you can. It's very disheartening and makes you wonder whether you want to even carry on.
Daly says signed Winnipeg Jets and NFL jerseys along with other items were stolen. He says a suspect was arrested after the February break-in when the thief posted the stolen items online. And WestJet is warning passengers on flights going through Toronto's Pearson Airport they may see inconsistent food and drinks on board. That's because more than 800 airline food service workers went on strike this morning to back demands for a living wage. Workers at the Swiss-owned travel catering company Gate Gourmet also cook, package, and deliver food and beverages to Air Canada, United Airlines, and Delta. That is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 12:30.
Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on your CBC Listen app. Do you have allergies? If you do, how are the symptoms impacting your life? We want to hear from you. Join us for our Radio Noon call-in conversation today. We'll have an allergist with us to take your calls and to advise us on the best way to survive allergy season. The number to call right now is our listener line to leave a message, 204-788-3797. We'll open the live lines at 12:30. Food insecurity is a growing problem in communities throughout the province. Coming up, we're going to hear about one food bank and how it's expanding. But first, keeping an eye on the Assiniboine River. Yes, officials in Brandon are keeping a close eye on water levels. The province issued an overland flood warning late yesterday. It's for areas in northwestern Manitoba, including Swan River, the Paw, Flin Flon, because of all the rain and snow in the forecast, combined with how quickly snow has been melting recently. Our weather specialist, Riley Leitchuk, will be coming in a little later in the half an hour to talk about more about the forecast and just what we're expecting. But it's precipitation that, yes, you could say our fields are dry and we need it, but when it comes too fast, overland flooding. With the flood warnings, it seems to be all about timing. Jay During knows that. He joins us in studio today. He's asked him to call him a senior scholar in civil engineering at the University of Manitoba. To us, he's our flood guy. Hello, Jay During. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
Hello.
Great to be back.
When you hear of the forecast right now, of that special weather statement that's out that we could get 25 millimeters, even 40 of precipitation in some areas, what do you think about?
I think about adding to a situation that's already out of its banks, certainly up in the Russell, the Verdon, Melita areas. Brandon's going to be touch and go. The flood peak is basically right at the bank full level, so a little additional precipitation may well put the Assiniboine River over its banks in Brandon itself.
What areas all flow into the Assiniboine?
So that's a very large watershed. It has an area of about 183,000 square kilometers.
I ask big questions.
Yeah, it extends well into Saskatchewan, and in fact, so well into Saskatchewan as a result of the Shellmouth Reservoir. So a large contributing area. The Paw itself, of course, sits on the Saskatchewan River. And it's really been that northwest corner that had, while everyone else was sort of seeing dry to below normal levels, that was kind of running normal or maybe even a little bit wet, and got sort of normalish precipitation. So as a result, while the rest of us have been looking at bare fields for weeks and weeks, which is very unusual, that area has been looking at sort of normal to slightly wet conditions, and this just further exasperates the something that's already wet.
Something that's already wet. Is the ground thawed enough in those areas? Any idea?
It probably is getting very close to thawed based on what I've seen for the runoff for that area. So I would think they've had a fair number of degree days above zero. We've all been enjoying relatively warm weather.
We have, and we thought we were in a year when flooding wasn't going to be a concern.
I don't know that flooding is ever not a concern until it's October or November again. We've seen large summer events pass through. We've seen Rule 4 within, the city of Winnipeg have to come into effect because of large rainstorms. We saw countless bridges and culverts washed out in 2022 as a result of a series of back-to-back low-pressure systems. So I think, the new norm, as I keep saying, is that there is no norm. Things keep swinging between extremes. So we're probably going to see relatively dry conditions in the south, and the north looks like they could see perhaps wetter than normal conditions.
There is no norm because we're swinging between extremes. Is that thanks to our friend climate change?
That is thanks to our friend climate change.
How prepared are we for those swings?
So this is kind of like what I used to say in 2022, that a lot of this infrastructure was designed pre sort of climate change awareness or climate change acceptance. And so we're seeing a lot of this infrastructure like we saw in 2022 that simply can't handle that degree of wetness. It becomes overwhelmed and it results typically in culverts and bridge crossings being washed out. I have family that live in Morden, and Dead Horse Creek is crossed over by Park Hill Drive. And it was only recently that bridge crossing was actually fixed, so from 2022. And there are countless other sites throughout the province where they simply have not been remediated as a result of the significant damage incurred in 2022. And where do you get the funds to fix it, right? It's a zero-sum game. There's only so much money. And right now, people seem to want to focus on healthcare, and I get that.
We've been talking so much about infrastructure the last couple of days here on Radio Noon, too. When you talk about bridges and roads washing out, that's all I keep thinking about is the money. Where's the money going to come from? You have particular concerns about the dikes that protect areas along the Assiniboine as well.
I do. I remain concerned about what's been identified by a local consultant as 32 critical areas. They total about 9.5 kilometers. And these are areas of the dike where the dike was built, I guess, unknowingly at the time over a layer of sand. So when you get high water within the riverbank itself and it's pressing up against the dike, it exerts additional hydraulic force on these critical areas, and the water tends to start piping through the sand. And if you get enough of a head behind that water, it can lead to essentially a foundation failure of the dike or a blowout of the dike, which is kind of like a hoop and holler, except you don't need an excavator to do it. That's one of the reasons why in 2011 the Assiniboine River wasn't run, the lower Assiniboine River wasn't run near its capacity for failure that one of these critical sites might actually give out.
And that hoop and holler reference was about a former government dug deliberately to try to take pressure
Correct, to try and take some pressure
off
off.
a space
Yes.
called the hoop and holler.
Hoop and holler, yeah.
If someone's listening right now and they're worried, they have property there, whatever, what should they be doing to protect their properties?
I think all I could say at this point is certainly the government is well aware. It's been studied. It's going to take a lot of money to fix. Subsequent governments have, I guess, continued to sort of kick this can down the road. So certainly being aware of it is an important step. It may mean that in the future we have to run the portage diversion well above its design capacity again. But I think at some point, we probably need to think about climate change and the impacts of climate change and the fact that when when they do need to be fixed or when they should have been fixed, will likely be caught off guard, right? Because all we need is sort of a 2022, right, where you get a set of successive back-to-back systems, because we're not talking about fixing these things in weeks. I suspect on a construction schedule, we're talking about fixing these things over years.
My goodness. And you talk about using the portage diversion, which, of course, lets water into Lake Manitoba.
Correct. So
and have we completed, forgive me, I should know as the news lady, but what's the process at the top of Lake Manitoba, those northern communities?
Right. So then there's the 2 outlet channels. And this is a project that I can't say I've ever been particularly a fan of. It has a benefit cost ratio much less than 1, which means the benefits are much less than the cost. Now, I get that people are being flooded here, but usually when you make these decisions, particularly when you have a benefit cost ratio of something like 0.25, you're going to spend 4 times as much on the solution as on the benefit. It might be time to re-examine that project. The trigger on this one was pulled by the Selinger government.
The same folks who dug for that hoop and holler.
Now, I'm not, pointing fingers at any particular government. I'm just simply noting that they were the ones that pulled the trigger on this project. And, it has an estimated cost of around $1 billion. So if we're looking for $1 billion in savings, it might be worth having a look at this project.
The communities up there will have a different opinion, perhaps, the people who were forced out of their homes.
True, absolutely, particularly those around the north end of Lake Manitoba, but probably many of those properties that suffered damage in 2011 have been raised and action has been taken. My heart certainly goes out to the people in Lake St. Martin that are displaced and continue to remain displaced. But again, I don't think anyone's going to be building at the same elevation. There are about 26 First Nation communities involved in those outlet channels, and as a result of a recent federal report, they've all expressed significant concern over impacts on water quality, on groundwater, and in particular on the sediment load. So you're talking about a channel that connects Lake St. Martin to Lake Winnipeg. It's about 23 kilometers long, and it drops over 100 feet. That's a very steep channel, and there are concerns about erosion and sediment load impacts in Lake Winnipeg and what implications that might have for fisheries.
I believe what you've done, sir, is just set up our next conversation. Thank you very much. Let's hear the different voices and talk to the folks impacted. Jay During is Senior Scholar in Civil Engineering with the University of Manitoba. Thank you so much for being here. If there's anything you want to contribute to this conversation, remember you can always call our listener line and stay with us because we're going to be talking about allergies a little later on Radio Noon. By the way, because of the overland flooding today, if you're traveling in some areas, be aware there may be road closures. If you'd like to check on road information before you head out, the website is manitoba511.ca.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose.
Wow, you're great to talk to.
The 2024 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
You are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. It is 12:18, and my name is Janet Stewart. We do have messy weather headed our way. Messy weather. Ha, 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 ha. It's going to be super messy for some of us. I'm laughing because I've made it sound so simplistic. Periods of rain begin this afternoon in the Red River Valley. Here, we're not getting the brunt of it. The brunt of it is heading up north, where there is a special weather statement in effect from basically the top of the lakes, the big lakes, up to northern communities, where they could get 30 centimeters of snow even. It'll start as rain, it'll change to snow the further north you are. The rain is going to start today. It'll start becoming mixed with snow, say, in Dauphin before the morning. Expect 10 millimeters of rain today, and then it will change to snow over the next 3 days, a bit of wind as well. 70% chance of rain showers or flurries. Light rain is falling in Dauphin. It's falling in Brandon as well. Light snow showers in Flin Flon right now. Mostly cloudy in Gillam, sunny in Island Lake, sunny in Lynn Lake, cloudy in Norway House. And here in Winnipeg, we're a mix of sun and cloud. Riley Lachuk will join us after the 12:30 news with more on what's headed our way. As inflation climbs and families struggle with rising grocery bills, rising rent, rising gas, rising everything. Yes, I know we had a break on gas prices, but still, for so long, everything got so much more expensive. Food banks are struggling to keep up. Harvest Manitoba struggling to keep up. But the Lorette Food Bank is expanding to meet the need and doing quite well thanks to a really supportive community. Roger Prevost is president of the Taché Food Resource Center. Good afternoon, Roger.
Good afternoon, Janet. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Sorry you can't see me on your Zoom picture right now. I don't think you can, but I appreciate you joining us by Zoom. Describe what challenges folks are facing in your community to find and afford nutritious food.
Well, with the pandemic, that's where things really started up, really more than anything. And 2021, we had a big increase of families needing our assistance. Up to, we were doing at 2021, 47 families. And lately, things have not really improved. In fact, they've got worse with the high costs and that. So right now we are dealing with our 35 volunteers at the food bank with assisting 97 families now, from 47 in 21 to 97 in 24. And these are consisting of 176 adults and 124 children. So we've been just busting at the seams, trying to keep enough space to put all the food that we need to supply to our residents.
Paint us a picture of just how busted at the seams you are. What's happening now with bins of food?
Well, what happens is that we have so much food that we need every 2 weeks. We have 3 different days of distribution of food. We used to have it all in one day. We've now run it up to 3 days. So we end up with, I had the figures here, but more than, we've got 3 commercial freezers right now, and 1 domestic freezer that are overstuffed from donations that we get, that we use, as well as we have to do, sorry about that. I'm going to just get the figures that I got.
No, that's okay. There's so much. Yeah. You know, that's actually a good problem to have, Roger. You have such generous donors. You don't need to rely on Harvest Manitoba. Tell us about that.
Well, what happens is that most food banks within the province do get assistance from Harvest Manitoba on a regular ongoing basis every week or every 2 weeks, depending on their distribution schedules. We've been very, very supportive in our community with both food as well as money, that we are able to buy what we need on every 2 weeks. We have special buyers that do the buying for us, and they go searching out for the better prices and everything else so that we can supply to our clients the food that they need every 2 weeks. As example, we go through every 2 weeks about 400 cans of soups, and that's just one item. And we have all sorts of other food items. So our buyers go out, and when that goes on sale, we buy as much as we can store, and that's where we have a real problem. We cannot store that much because we don't have the room.
So we need a lot of space. Let's talk about storage. Storage has become an issue, but I understand you got a grant for $15,000.
Yes, we've been making numerous applications for grants over the years. Then in the fall of this year, our Vice President Ellison Fox made our latest application to the Harvest Manitoba under their Harvest Manitoba Capacity Grant. And with that, they were able to give us a grant of $15,000 to assist us to put on a 12 by 28 foot expansion onto the back of our building that we share with Thrifty Treasures in Lorette.
Thrifty Treasures. What kind of
Yes.
neighbor is it to have this thrift store, Lorette Thrifty Treasures, as your neighbor? What's that like?
Oh, it is just fantastic. The people there, they have 50, 60 volunteers. They run their store 4 to 6 days a week, and they are our biggest supporter in the community in monetary. If we need funds, we need something special, or we have a need for a freezer, they come and they come right to the table and bring us some money for the freezer. They also support many other community endeavors. If it wasn't for Thrifty Treasures, I think so many people and so many organizations in this community would not be able to survive and to exist.
So when in Lorette, please shop at Thrifty Treasures. That's a little
Yes,
ad
please.
I just did right there.
Yes, thank you.
Now, they're also helping you, since you're splitting the space. You're kind of going halvesies on this extension as well. Plus, they're helping you with a loan.
Yes, what it is that we only take about half of the back part of the building, which is about 1,300 square feet. So they take the other half of the back of the building. And when they found that we were going to try to do this expansion, they said they would do the expansion as well. So we're going to do the full 12 feet back for the 56 feet for the building in the back. And we do not have the funds to do this expansion. But they came forth and they said they will assist us in loaning us the money that we would have to pay back for our portion that we were not having covered by grants, which is going to be around $31,000. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing fundraising for this to try to, over and above our regular trying to obtain funds for the food bank, but this is going to be our building expansion funds.
And in the meantime, your favorite neighbor, the Thrifty Treasures, gives you a $31,000 no-interest loan. That's pretty wonderful.
Exactly.
And now you're
they're
selling...
just fabulous.
Your first fundraiser is a 50-50 that starts today. How excited are you to get this new space going this summer?
Well, I can't begin to explain that how much is needed. Like we have the need for storage. We can take advantage of different communities. We in the fall, for instance, we have all the community comes forth with produce from their gardens, and we didn't have any place to put it. Now we're going to have place that we can store it, so that we can acquire it and then give it to our clients on a regular every 2 weeks. And, it's just fabulous. It's going to be 300 square feet, 336 square feet that we're going to be adding, which is a 25% increase. So that's just going to be great. We hope we're not going to be needing more space. But that depends on the community, on the how things go within our government. And
yeah, hopefully everything will go well for families in your area.
Yeah, right.
And the need will go down. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? But in the meantime, yeah, it would. Roger Prevost, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, thank you very much, Janet, for your interest. And I want to put just one little shot out that we have our annual general meeting in Landmark on the 26th of April. And then we're inviting all of the residents of Taché to come out and join us and learn something about our food banks. Okay?
Okay. Roger Prevost, president of the Taché Food Resource Center, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Janet. Have a
You too. Have a great day. It is 12:29. Coming up after the news and weather, we are going to have our call-in conversation about allergies. An allergist is joining us, so we want to know, are you sneezing? If allergies are cutting into your quality of life, we want to hear from you. How do the symptoms impact your life? What would it be like? What could you do if your allergies just went away? Call our lines. The phone line, 204-780-0893, opens now. The time is 12:30.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Josh Crabb. At 12:30, it's currently 11 degrees in Winnipeg, rain and a high of 13 expected this afternoon. RCMP say 3 17-year-old boys have been charged with sexual assault in connection to a hazing incident on a Manitoba hockey team. Police say the incident happened in January. There are 5 victims who are 15 and 16 years old. In a social media post, the RCMP says violent and humiliating initiations are unacceptable and will result in criminal charges. The province has a youth addictions crisis. That's according to the Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth, Sherry Gott. She says between 2018 and 2023, the number of advocacy cases involving addictions has jumped from 3% to 22%. She found most are girls and Indigenous. Gott says they have been hearing from service providers and the young people themselves who say there is a lack of resources.
What is needed is that they need to provide cultural, land-based programming for the youth that's holistic, that meets their needs, and there needs to be a continuum of care after they leave their facilities, after they're done their treatment. There needs to be support in the communities.
Gott says Central and Northern Manitoba have the biggest gap in resources for addictions and mental health services for young people. She's calling on the province to increase funding to those services. Manitoba Progressive Conservatives will choose a new leader on April 25th, just not this April 25th. The PCs are waiting until April 2025 to choose a new permanent successor to former Premier Heather Stephenson. Brad Zander, who leads the leadership selection committee, says the party wants to take the time to conduct the race properly. He also says the long lead time will benefit the candidates.
Just to give potential candidates the chance to really get out there and engage with as many Manitobans as possible, and so a longer period of time provides that opportunity.
Lactamani MLA Wayne Owasco is serving as interim PC leader. He has not ruled out a run. Former MLA Kevin Klein is also interested in the job. The owner of Joe Daily Sports and Framing wonders if it's worth staying in business after thieves broke into his store for the 3rd time in 6 months. It's been in business for 35 years. Travis Daly says since the last break-in back in February, they've had security guards outside the store on St. Mary's Road. But he says last night thieves pried open the door before the guards arrived. Daly says they stole signed jerseys.
The hockey ones are, for the sake of argument, a $300 item. There was a couple of football ones that were stolen that are, $1,100, $1,200 items. So it's they're not cheap. And they took probably 8 or 10 different jerseys.
Daly isn't sure if his store is being targeted, but he's frustrated with the crime. And that is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is coming up at 1:30.
Thanks very much, Josh
You're
Crabb.
welcome. You're welcome.
Our weather specialist, Riley Lachak's got a busy day on his hands. How are you, Riley?
A busy and wet day.
Yes,
ahead,
absolutely.
Janet, across Manitoba. Yes, we still do have special weather statements in place for a good chunk of northern Manitoba. And yes, we have started to see the main band of precipitation moving into southwestern Manitoba. So looking at satellite radar, yes, most of western Manitoba now into this good soaking rain at this hour. We did see a band of precipitation move through the Red River Valley, through the Interlake, and through the city of Winnipeg as well through the early morning hours. That has since tapered off, and we will see this main band of precipitation moving north and east as we head through the afternoon today. So yes, I did mention we have a special weather statement. So for Gillam, Oxford House, Norway House, the Pas, OCN, Flin Flon, Lynn Lake, the Thompson region in this as well. 20 to 40 millimeters of precipitation, both in the form of rain and snow as we head through Tuesday to Thursday. So over the next couple of days or so. As we move through the afternoon, we are looking at that rain picking up in intensity across southern Manitoba, so some pockets of heavier precipitation as we get through the later afternoon, starting here in the Red River Valley through the late afternoon, early evening, continuing through the overnight hours. The western part of Manitoba through the overnight gets a bit of a break, but we see more of that precipitation here in the Winnipeg region overnight tonight. Into Wednesday, another band of rain pushes through early through the Red River Valley and the Interlake. This associated with the Alberta Clipper, the second area of low pressure, as it wraps around through later Wednesday into Thursday, bringing us periods of wet flurries or some light snow even through the early morning hours on Thursday. Temperatures also cool off, so that will support the development of this more as a light snow or a wet flurries event as opposed to a more of a rain event through the later part of this week. In terms of accumulation to come, we're looking at generally in the Red River Valley about 30 millimeters of precipitation to about lunchtime Thursday, another 15 to 30 for the Westman region as well. Snowfall up to 10 centimeters in parts of western Manitoba. I know some of the forecast modeling suggesting that we could get 20 plus through areas like Thompson, Norway House, but I think generally 5 to 10 centimeters across northern Manitoba. Some pockets, though, some heavier accumulation as we get through the next 48 hours. Forecast for today, looking at highs of 6 and 7 for Westman, 13s for Winnipeg, Emerson, Sprague, 8 in Gimli, with showers continuing through the later part of the afternoon today, and that rain-snow mix in the north, 3 and 5 for both DePaul and Lynn Lake, 6 in Thompson. Temperatures really stay quite cool for the balance of the work week. Janet, we're looking at periods of rain, 7 degrees tomorrow, 2 and 1 for Thursday and Friday, and then we start to rebound, 7 for Saturday and back up to 13 degrees for Sunday. Oh, I know. We were quite spoiled, and I am hopeful that this precipitation will start to kind of cut down on the dust and kind of replenish our water tables.
So hopefully we don't have serious damage from overland flooding.
Yeah.
And the areas that need moisture get it.
Yes, exactly.
I try so hard to stay glass half full.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
Riley Lachuk, our weather specialist, he will be joining Up to Speed this afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. 4 to 6, because 3 to 4 today we have a national budget special here on CBC Radio. And then Riley again will be on the newscast tonight at 6, which you can watch anytime you like on CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. Little wave to the friends watching on YouTube today. If you have allergies, if someone you love has allergies, join our call-in conversation today with allergist Dr. Christina Kalasinski. Our live lines are opening now, 204-780-0893. If you live outside Winnipeg, you don't have a phone plan that allows you to call Winnipeg for free, the number is 1-800-268-5483. Here's our question. How do allergies impact your life? How much would your life change if your allergies disappear? Join the conversation, 204-780-0893. Dr. Christina Kalasinski, forgive me for the hesitation, is our guest today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for the invite, and hello and good afternoon.
You are a doctor in adult clinical immunology and allergy at Health Sciences Center and Grace Hospital, correct? Is that still true? How busy is this time of year for an allergist like yourself?
Well, the busyness, the consults, the new consults that are coming, will take a while to be seen. Those of our patients that are having difficulty currently are calling and communicating with our clinic nurse, and at times having to have more urgent appointments to discuss their symptoms. But we usually try to have patients have a plan of what to do when it's time for their allergy season.
A plan for what to do, and I guess the details of that plan would have to do with the individual and how severe their symptoms are. What kind of symptoms can people face?
Well, the typical symptoms would be nasal and eye symptoms. So lots of sneezing, itchy nose, runny nose, nasal congestion, itchy, watery eyes. Some of the allergens that are out there right now also affect people that have asthma. So their asthma might become more symptomatic. They may have more symptoms.
We have a caller now. Brenda is on the line. I'm just going to let Brenda into the conversation. Hi, Brenda. Thank you for calling Radio Noon. How do allergies impact you? Oh, I apologize. I thought Brenda was ready to talk with us. She's not quite ready yet. We'll get to that caller in just a moment. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. Anybody else out there who lives with allergies, has someone they love whose life is impacted by allergies, call us. Bring us your questions. Tell us your stories. 204-780-0893. I've heard people say, Dr. Kalasinski, things like they'll sneeze, and certainly in the early days of COVID and afterwards, when every sniffle was something that people worried could be contagious, they would say, no, don't worry, it's just allergies. Just allergies. They can be really, how life-changing can an allergy be?
Well, we discussed the nasal symptoms and the eye symptoms, and those can be anywhere from just mild and a nuisance to a lot more bothersome and affecting quality of life. There's many studies published out there where the symptoms are significantly affecting day-to-day activities, affecting work and work efficiency, even time missed from work. Sleep is affected also in children. Again, sleep, concentration, and just again their ability to concentrate, focus in school. So it can be anywhere from, like I said, mild and a nuisance to definitely affecting quality of life, and may mean missing things like work and school, and as well affecting the parents of those children who are symptomatic.
And if it's impacting work and school, I mean, that can impact the rest of your life. If you aren't doing well in school, you start to fall behind, you start to feel bad about yourself. That can really snowball.
Yes, correct.
Brenda, our caller, I believe, is ready now. Hi, Brenda. Thanks for calling Radio Noon.
You're welcome.
How do allergies impact your life?
Well, sometimes I just sneeze uncontrollably, or my eyes are, so itchy and red and watery that, I can't see out of one of them. I don't know, impacting my life. Like, do I want to go driving, with, my eyes, or one eye or two, like, watering severely, like I'll sneeze uncontrollably.
With no warning, it'll just hit you?
Yeah. Sometimes it'll just come. Now, the runny nose is constant. That, doesn't go away. And if I'm in public, people are looking at me like, boy, she's sneezing and her nose is running, and, as if like I have the plague.
Well, how does that make you feel?
I just I wear a mask, and nobody says anything, but get real. There are other things out there besides COVID.
It really did. It changed things, didn't it? Though it made people scared.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, like before, you'd sneeze in the spring or have a runny nose, and people wouldn't think twice about it. But now, yeah, it's, people look at you okay, that's what they want to do. And I do have a question for the doctor. I'm taking an allergy medication. I get it at Costco. It's a generic brand. It seems to be working, but my doctor said I might have to take that constantly because I do have a complication of asthma. So if I have a runny, stuffy nose, it's hard to breathe. I have asthma, of course. Is there an alternative besides an allergy medication.
Well, hello, Brenda, and thanks for being with us. You're taking an antihistamine,
Yes,
a
an
generic form, and I'm hoping that it is a non-drowsy one.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
yeah.
That's good. So that is like the first step of controlling allergy symptoms. It does, fairly well for the, mild to maybe slightly moderate itchy nose, sneezing, runny nose, itchy eyes. It is safe to take it on a daily basis. During an allergy season. Some people have year-round allergies if they're allergic to, let's say, a pet that's in their home or that they have contact with every day. So it is safe to take it on a daily basis. It is the first step, and some people get some benefit but may not be totally controlled. There then are prescription nasal sprays. That help all the nasal symptoms. In addition, they help the nasal congestion because antihistamines don't really do much for the nasal congestion. And so these prescription nasal sprays are the next step that would treat all those nasal symptoms that I mentioned. And they also are safe to use on a daily basis. Again, seasonally if a person needs to, or year-round if they have year-round allergies. You can even combine the antihistamine and the prescription nasal spray.
What do you have to watch out for, doctor? Like, are there any? Can there be dangerous counter? I would be nervous taking two of them at the same time. I'd worry that it's going to have some sort of rebound effect.
No, there wouldn't be a rebound effect. They sort of complement each other because the antihistamine blocks one specific substance that causes all these symptoms called histamine, but then there's other substances that do that or that contribute, and that's where the prescription nasal sprays come in. So they are safe. The spray is working really locally in the nose to make it more normal. Like when these sprays came out 20 plus years ago, prior to them being introduced, of course they had to go through various studies, including even biopsies of the people in the study of their nasal lining, and it looked more like a normal lining of the nose as opposed to an allergic nose.
And that's a prescription spray.
Yes. So that would be, a discussion. If an antihistamine doesn't work for all the symptoms or is not effective, then it would be speaking with your primary health care provider about next steps, which would be something like the prescription nasal spray. In cases where there's control, that it's despite the nasal spray and the antihistamine. If symptoms are still not well controlled, then the next step is to get referred to someone like myself, to an allergist, and that's when we get all the information that we need, ask a lot of questions, review medications, and then do the skin testing to the different. We'll focus on the inhalant allergens. So that's the various molds, the various tree pollen, grass pollen, weed pollen, house dust mite, some fruit animals, depending on the person's home life and what's in the home. And then that gives us a better idea of what actually they're allergic to, sometimes based on the seasonal pattern of symptoms. And we know what's around and what pollinates at what time. We're able to have an idea, but it's always better, especially if we're having difficulty with control, to find out exactly what the allergies are, and then that allergists can also discuss maybe fine-tuning some of those medications, and also discussing some other medications that can be considered. And Brent is correct. When the nose is really active, in someone who has asthma, the asthma can also flare.
How are they connected? Asthma and allergies.
How asthma and allergies? Well, there are some allergens that are very small and can get into the bronchial tubes of the lungs. An example is mold, and right now we are in mold season. So when people talk about the snow mold, that's one of the allergenic molds that's in the air currently. So it's a big allergen on the prairies. So if people are having symptoms early spring and the molds come back in the fall, in peak air in peak time, that may be what they're allergic to. So that same mold in people who have asthma. And if they're allergic to the mold, because you don't have to be, but if you are, this time of year can cause asthma symptoms to flare as well as the nasal symptoms.
I just want to take a moment to repeat our call-in line. Thank you, Brenda, for calling. If you have questions for the doctor, something you would like to share about allergies and the need for understanding when people are looking at you funny, and you want to be able to tell them, no, guys, this is real. 204-780-0893. 204-780-0893. If you live outside Winnipeg and you don't have a phone plan that covers your calls to the city, it's 1-800-268-5483. Our guest today is Dr. Christina Kalasinski. Dr. Kalasinski, we were just talking about mold season and that's bothering a lot of people right now. We're about to get a lot of rain. How do you expect that to impact the allergens that are floating around in the air right now?
Well, in addition to the mold that's out there, what we call an allergen, which means it's natural, it's supposed to be there, the immune system is not supposed to react to it. So when you have these inhalant or environmental allergies, your immune system is overreacting to them. So to the molds, they're not supposed to overreact, but if they do, and your skin test shows you have an allergic antibody to mold, then and you have the typical symptoms at this time of year. That's allergy. The other, which is out there right now, of course, is all that, and all this wind today doesn't help. The dust, from all the sanding and everything, of course, that's on the streets and also on the grasses. So being blown around. So all that particle dust, that's a major irritant to nose, eyes, and also to the breathing tubes. The difference between an irritant, well, it directly irritates the lining that it hits. So it's not the immune system reacting to it, but it causes very similar symptoms and compounds the symptoms in someone that also has allergies to, for example, mold. And I'm talking about mold because that's where we're in right now. So with the rain, it will at least hopefully help all the dust. And yes, if we have, of course, a lot of rain, of course, we need, if things are really, really wet, of course, that can lead to more mold. But then you're having to be. It has to be quite wet. But overall, the hope is that the rain might help the particle dust that's out there and may actually improve people's symptoms, whether or not you have allergies. Because in some people, it's the dust, this particle dust, the irritant effect. Their noses overreact more than others.
Now, Doctor, you mentioned having an allergy test, the skin test. Elizabeth is a caller who's just reached out to us, and she has been diagnosed with an allergy. Elizabeth, thank you for calling Radio Noon.
Hi. Thanks for doing this. I have a skin condition as a result of what we believe is an allergy, and it's under control and improving. I'm wondering if the things in the air now could exacerbate that.
What do you say to that, Dr. Kalasinski? Do you understand fully, or do you need more detail?
Well, it's more detail, but of course this is personal health information, so we won't ask for any. But there could be various skin conditions where, especially the dust and anything that makes the skin itchy, can make a variety of especially itchy rashes worse. And with regards to, let's say the mold, or if we talk about grass pollen or tree pollen, which will be coming later, it's not as common for them to specifically flare rashes. In some people that have a specific rash called eczema or atopic dermatitis, they may notice some increase in rash if they have the eczema on their face, but more so especially with the pollens that we're talking about, the mold, nasal and eye. But like I said, the particle dust out there because dust getting on the skin can just itself make the skin itchy by irritating it. And if you already have a rash, then it can make it flare.
Rick would like to get in on the conversation as well. Hi, Rick. Thanks for calling Radio Noon.
Hi, I have a question for the doctor. I've got all the symptoms of allergies. My eyes, I'm constantly rubbing my eyes. I have trouble sleeping. I'm always tired, and my asthma seems to be year-round now. My question is, how do you know if it's allergy versus a sinus infection, and is the only treatment antibiotics?
It's a very good question, and I guess the first step would be to see at least for a primary health provider and describe your symptoms. And you're right, even for us, even as an allergist, it is sometimes difficult to know if it's one or the other, and sometimes it actually can be both, because if it's if it's a time of year for a particular person's allergy time and the nose is really swollen and leaky, and they happen to also pick up a cold, then that can the cold can just make things worse, and all the secretions that are in the nose and sinuses don't drain properly, and then it can become an infection. So it's really the types of, overall, if we just want to be sort of more black and white about it, symptoms, if it's, allergies, yes, you can have the stuffy nose. The discharge from the nose is usually clear or white. If it starts getting more colored, then it means you should be seeing somebody and having that discussion, do I now have an infection as well?
So that's your advice to Rick or any of us. If you've got a runny nose or phlegm, if it's changing color, it's not clear or white.
If it's different, and I recall, the early days of COVID, and Janet, just like you brought up, all the same, the symptoms that people are watching out for, and how to differentiate COVID at that time from allergies, and really it's and the same thing I'm going to say with the sinus or sort of anything that's if you're a person that has had allergies or has had symptoms, and your symptoms, if there's any specific change in them, that they're changing, they're getting worse, they're affecting, like Rick had said about his asthma now year-round, that's all the sign that, you do need to see your healthcare provider, discuss those kind of symptoms, because things may be changing, not necessarily allergies, but other things may be playing a role.
Allergist Dr. Christina Kalasinski, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us today. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure to be with you. It's so I guess the time went by very quickly, so I really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who called in, too. We were talking there at the end just about COVID a little bit, COVID-19, the fear that people had. COVID, of course, is still around, but there's a change that was just announced today to the COVID vaccine immunization program. Starting May 1st, COVID vaccines won't be available in Manitoba until the fall. So if you haven't yet had your fall booster, you may want to try to get it. You are eligible until April 30th. Faith Fundal joins us now on Federal Budget Day, which impacts your program, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the budget and everything you need to know about that, including a reaction from local MPs, at least one local MP. We're also going to hear more about how a cocktail can tell a story. We'll hear about a specialty cocktail created in honor of a nurse who cared for AIDS patients in the 1980s. So we'll hear more on why it was created and where you can find it coming up on the program.
Oh, that sounds like a lovely story.
I love when stories are attached to things like that.
Absolutely. And tomorrow's call in for Radio New York, our calling conversations all about food.
Oh, perfect.
All about food and the memories and the things that it brings to you, so much more than sustenance, but, food for the soul. Faith Fundal hosts Up to Speed, which is normally on 3 to 6 here on CBC Radio, but it is Federal Budget Day, so between 3 and 4 today on Up to Speed, we have a federal budget special. Host Susan Bonner will be joined by Catherine Cullen at 3 p.m. Winnipeg time to let you know what you should be watching out for on the Federal Budget Day. And hey, readers, guess what? We're having a special contest. World Book Day is coming up. We've got some beautiful bundles of books to give away, but what we need you to do is tell us about a special book you've read. Email win@cbc.ca to tell us about a special book you've read, why you love it, and help us celebrate World Book Day. And you could win. You could also call our listener line, 204-788-3205, to tell us about books. I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow at 12:30 about food that is special to your heart. Thank you to everyone who helped put this show together. Up next, Unreserved.